And that's when I start to notice that something's wrong. Everyone I cared about has been systematically replaced. And finally, I want to scream, and I'm like, why are they replacing every single character with someone who is diverse?
The feud began almost innocently, a modern twist on Disney's Snow White that nobody thought would spark a cultural blow-up. But things took a wild turn the moment South Park announced its so-called DI special, following its earlier Panderverse parody. Suddenly, Rachel Zgler's outspoken views on the 1937 classic found themselves at the center of a relentless comedic storm, courtesy of Trey and Matt Stone's notoriously unforgiving brand of satire. Like a match to Kindling, the show's lampoon of Rachel, portrayed as an actress hell-bent on rewriting tradition, ignited a massive online debate that escalated far beyond a single cartoon episode. Overnight, curious spectators, longtime Disney fans, and casual viewers were all dissecting every snippet of the South Park segments, every cryptic post from Rachel, and every leaked rumor from Disney's top brass. Before long, what started as a simple remake became a spectacle of canceled appearances, rumored script overhauls, and frantic boardroom strategies, while South Park fanned the flames with each new comedic jab. At the center of it all stood Rachel Zgler, caught between her vision for an updated princess and the unflinching spotlight of a show determined to poke fun at Hollywood's biggest elephants in the room. And just like that, the stage was set for an unprecedented meltdown, one that turned an innocent fairy tale remake into a swirling battleground for modern ideals, corporate indecision, and razor-sharp satire. In the beginning, the chatter focused on Rachel's background, an up-and-coming performer with a powerful singing voice, fresh off a breakout role that made her one of Hollywood's fastest-rising talents. Securing a part as the legendary Disney princess seemed like a natural next step in her budding career. Yet the trouble started almost immediately, sparked by interviews where she candidly dismissed aspects of the 1937 Snow White as outdated. To some, her boldness signaled progress. Why cling to the past when you can update it for today's audiences? But for devoted Disney purists, it struck a nerve. Social media lit up with posts accusing her of lacking respect for the legacy that paved her path. Even worse, the discussions flared into bigger arguments about modern remakes disrespecting the original magic. That single notion set the foundation for everything that followed. Fans uneasy about changes to classic stories, an actress determined to speak her truth, and a studio not quite prepared to handle the blowback. The earliest wave of skepticism might have calmed on its own had Rachel chosen a gentler approach. Instead, every new soundbite from her seemed to raise eyebrows further. She talked about rewriting the heroine's motivations, turning the story into a push for societal awareness, and rejecting the idea of a typical love story. Audiences caught wind of phrases like antiquated narrative and big changes on the way, fueling speculation that Snow White 2025 would have little in common with its predecessor. In fairness, some fans welcomed the shift, calling it long overdue. Why not reimagine a princess who waits passively for a prince? But others asked a different question. Was Snow White really the place to teach a contemporary lesson, or was it simply a timeless fable that didn't need an overhaul? No matter one's stance, the message was clear. Rachel wasn't shy about challenging the script or the legacy behind it. By this point, Disney executives were quietly concerned. They loved the idea of an empowered heroine, but worried the negativity swirling online would overshadow any excitement. Rumors sprang up about behind-the-scenes phone calls urging Rachel to watch her tone in interviews. Tensions rose, yet all of this paled in comparison to what would happen once filming began. News filtered out that the set was far from a fairy tale, with tension mounting among the cast and crew. Most ominously, Rachel's relationship with her co-star, the celebrated Gal Gadot, was rumored to be shaky at best. While the world had expected an off-screen sisterhood, two strong women helming a classic female-led story, behind the curtain, friction built steadily. Some said they clashed over creative differences. Others whispered that entire scenes were being rewritten. The stage was set for a meltdown, but the worst was still on its way. Production insiders painted a picture of a chaotic set, reshoots, script revisions, and last-minute directives from Disney's top brass. Supposedly, new lines were dropped in to intensify Snow White's modern persona, while the evil queen was reconfigured to reflect updated values. Some staffers praised the shift, calling it an inspired take that could resonate with younger generations. Yet it was impossible to ignore the nerves swirling around cast discussions. Rachel was rumored to be increasingly vocal, championing a version of Snow White that made major departures from the 1937 film. According to whispers, she felt Gal Gadot's portrayal of the evil queen was overshadowing her newly reimagined heroine. This only fueled more tension. Compounding matters, talk began to circulate of test screenings that left focus groups polarized. It wasn't just about Rachel's performance, it was the entire production's tone. Rather than the whimsical fantasy so many associated with Disney, the reworked script allegedly had heavier social commentary. If it worked, it could breathe fresh life into a dated storyline. If it flopped, it risked alienating loyalists. Feeling the weight of these stakes, Disney's marketing team tried to keep a lid on anything that might spark more controversy. As a result, Rachel's talk show appearances mysteriously vanished from schedules, officially chalked up to scheduling conflicts. Unofficially, plenty of folks believed Disney was trying to prevent yet another viral quote that might inflame tensions further. In interviews that did remain, Rachel walked a tightrope. She praised the original for its historical significance, but maintained it needed a modern upgrade. On paper, that sounded reasonable. But in social media's echo chamber, people seized on any line that hinted she was too good for a revered Disney classic. Meanwhile, the friction between her and Gal, though not overtly confirmed, became a hot topic among fans. Did they truly feud on set, or were these rumors blown out of proportion? The bigger question was whether the co-stars' rumored hostility would affect the final cut. Some stories claimed entire scenes involving the queen were toned down, if only to give Rachel more room to shine. Add in the swirl of rewrites, corporate mandates, and a divided fan base, and it felt as though the meltdown was already in progress. But the spark that pushed it over the edge arrived when South Park decided to weigh in. When word got out that South Park was teasing a new special centered on the DEI phenomenon, fans of the raunchy show were intrigued. The famed creators, Trey Parker and Matt Stone, had long lampooned real-world controversies, but rarely did they go after Disney so pointedly. Then came the unmistakable wink, a caricature of Rachel Zgler in full meltdown mode, raging about how she was saving society by updating Snow White. The episode, quick and biting, portrayed her as an overzealous star obsessed with modernizing everything and silencing anyone who disagreed. In typical South Park style, the exaggeration was brutal, yet it struck an uncomfortable chord. Viewers who had seen Rachel's real interviews noted uncanny parallels between the jokes and her actual words. Within hours of airing, the internet exploded. Memes highlighting the show's jabs at Disney's approach went viral. Old interviews of Rachel's were recirculated, juxtaposed with the South Park parody to show just how closely reality mirrored satire. People who'd never paid attention to the Snow White remake suddenly weighed in, expressing shock that an actress could sound so dismissive of a classic. Others took a more nuanced view, defending Rachel for wanting to break old stereotypes, while acknowledging South Park simply turned up the volume on an existing controversy. In any case, Disney's top executives were reportedly alarmed. If they were already fretting over negative chatter, this spotlight poured gasoline on a flame they struggled to keep under control. As the memes circulated, rumors abounded that Rachel was outraged behind the scenes, an actress who felt humiliated by the mocking portrayal. Sources close to her camp claimed she was taken aback by the speed at which the internet latched onto South Park's version of events. Yet if she was tempted to defend herself publicly, Disney apparently urged her to stand down, fearing that any reaction would only fuel the comedic fire. Before long, speculation about a possible statement from Rachel clashed with the studio's stance of silence. That tension spilled over onto social media, where fans noticed cryptic posts believed to be from Rachel, lamenting how satire can overshadow real conversations. Whether or not the posts were truly about the South Park parody, they added another layer of intrigue to an already charged situation. Meanwhile, Disney's corporate tower was in full crisis mode. Bob Iger, who'd stepped back into the CEO chair to stabilize the company, now faced a problem bigger than just one movie. The meltdown around Snow White 2025 threatened the broader perception of Disney's brand at a time when the studio, could least afford negative attention. Recent releases underperformed, streaming concerns piled up, and audience trust felt shakier than ever. South Park had exposed the fiasco for millions of viewers outside the typical movie news bubble, making it the punchline of talk shows and online forums. The question internally was, how do you stop a runaway train? Executives reportedly held emergency meetings to assess the damage. Should they postpone the release date, hoping the storm would pass, or push forward and hope the noise died down before opening weekend? Some advisors argued for a complete revamp of the marketing campaign, focusing less on Rachel's statements and more on the timeless magic of the story. Others believe that scrapping her promotional appearances altogether would be a safer bet, though it risked fanning rumors that she was being silenced. All the while, Rachel's team watched the chaos unfold, growing frustrated with the studio's shifting strategies. Insiders whispered about possible legal showdowns if Disney minimized her promotional commitments in a way that breached contractual obligations. The meltdown wasn't confined to Rachel alone. Word leaked that Gal Gadot felt uneasy about the negative coverage overshadowing her performance. One rumor suggested that some of her best scenes as the evil queen might be trimmed if it helped reduce tension. Another rumor claimed executives pondered beefing up the queen's role just to distract from the comedic portrayal of Snow White. No official statements clarified any of these rumors, so they lingered in the public imagination, magnifying the sense that Disney had lost its grip. Each new rumor fed the narrative. This was a project spinning out of control, made worse by corporate indecision and an actress who spoke too candidly at the wrong time. As official channels kept quiet, fans filled the silence with endless debate. Two camps emerged, one that accused Rachel of stepping on a legacy she never truly appreciated, and another that praised her for challenging outdated tropes. In the first group, nostalgia ran deep, and the changes to Snow White felt like an assault on childhood memories. They shared old clips, reminding everyone of the 1937 film's artistry. Even more, they circulated Rachel's quotes, ridiculing her comments about stalker princes and antiquated ideals. The memes practically wrote themselves, with images of the cartoon prince brandishing hearts while side text labeled him the original offender. On the other side, supporters cheered the notion of a modern heroine who didn't revolve around romance. They insisted Rachel's critics refused to accept the reality that times and audience values have changed. In their view, it was perfectly fine to rework a story from nearly a century ago, especially when many old fairy tales revolve around passive female leads. To them, South Park was just comedic sensationalism feeding trolls who wanted any excuse to tear a young actress down. The online skirmishes rarely found middle ground, and the meltdown narrative only grew louder with each social media post referencing new behind-the-scenes drama. Hashtags like hashtag Snow White Fiasco and hashtag Rachel Zgler Meltdown kept trending, overshadowing any attempt at calm discourse. Meanwhile, more details leaked about Rachel's alleged reaction to the South Park episode. Some claim she was stunned by how accurately the show mirrored parts of her real interviews, albeit in a mocking style. Others believe she was mortified that her image had become a prime target for late-night jokes, internet parodies, and comedic sketches. Worse yet, Disney's choice to remain silent left her in a peculiar spot. Should she apologize for her previous comments and risk looking weak, or stand her ground and risk more backlash? The resulting limbo created anxiety around every social media post she made or liked. Even the vaguest statements were interpreted as digs at either fans or the studio itself. It was an echo chamber that refused to die down, and any attempts to redirect the conversation toward the movie's actual plot fell flat. At the heart of it all was a simple fact. Once a comedic brand like South Park spotlights you, it's almost impossible to shake the stigma if you already have an army of critics waiting for ammunition. With a massive budget, high-profile talent, and the weight of Disney's legacy behind it, Snow White 2025 was supposed to be a show-stopping event. Instead, it has become synonymous with controversy, from Rachel Zegler's frank opinions to the rumored behind-the-scenes tension to an avalanche of memes triggered by a satirical show. At this point, observers are divided over whether the finished product can cut through the static. Could the film debut to glowing reviews that hush the naysayers? Or will it prove a cautionary tale for a studio that banked on star power without fully embracing fan sentiment? In Hollywood history, there have been wild turnarounds, movies that seemed plagued by negativity before release, but went on to surprise audiences and critics. Yet the chatter around Snow White 2025 is so constant, it's hard to imagine it simply fading away. By now, the entire narrative has extended beyond one actress's comments. It's become a debate about how far studios should go to modernize iconic tales, and whether it's even possible to do so without alienating the core fan base. No matter how loud the controversies get, the film is still slated for a global audience who may tune in purely out of curiosity. Can the most talked about Disney remake in years live up to its heightened drama? For Rachel, the stakes are just as high. If the film flops amid the negativity, she risks being forever linked to a debacle that overshadowed her potential. If it finds its footing, she may well silence critics who doubted her vision. Either way, she is sure to remain a polarizing figure for some time. As for Disney, the decisions they make in handling this meltdown could set the tone for future remakes and reboots. Will they opt for safer strategies, resisting radical changes that rattle traditional fans, or double down on modernizing even their most sacred franchises? Industry watchers are closely monitoring how Bob Iger and his team maneuver through this crisis, because it speaks volumes about the future of Disney in a landscape that's increasingly skeptical of formulaic reboots. Meanwhile, South Park has moved on to new targets, but the sting of its parody lingers, etched in the public's memory. Fans and casual viewers alike now associate Rachel Zgler with that satirical caricature, an actress who criticized the original film so fiercely, she became a comedic punchline. Whether you see that depiction as hilariously spot-on or unfairly skewed, there's no denying it fueled a cultural flashpoint. It also forced many to question, should public figures with big platforms weigh their words more carefully when they're entrusted with beloved characters? Or is frank honesty part of pushing the medium forward?